I hope you also enjoyed the videos as much as I did. I'm often asked, what is it that I missed most about being at home? And I always say it's the beautiful sunsets. And I'm quite sure you saw on the videos just how beautiful they are, especially when you have such gray weather like we have today. We could do with a little bit of beautiful sunset like Zimbabwe has. So taking our evening further and to begin with the panel discussion on investment opportunities in Zimbabwe, a hearty welcome to the Head of Corporate Affairs at ZTA, Mr. Chief Godfrey Koti.
Thank you very much, Elita. Or is it Elita? Back home, she's Elita. So I found out yesterday that they call her Elita. Guten Abend. How are you guys? Maskwera say. Maskwera say? Lichona njani? Mabuyani? Machona bwino? Better. All right, like she said, my name is Godfrey Koti, mostly known as Chief Koti. I will tell you the story about being a chief because I left my Spectra somewhere in the security checkpoints. But it is definitely representing the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here just to steer the conversation for you to understand and get more detail as to how this beautiful country called Zimbabwe welcomes you and is open for business. And we mean that by all of those letters in that particular statement. Zimbabwe is indeed open for business. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time to welcome onto the stage the director at the National Arts Council of Zimbabwe, Obaba Umoyo. Nicholas is his name. Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So as he's coming, he tells me, Honorable Minister, that he lost his bag. So along somewhere at the airport, but I'm sure you will get it very soon, yeah? Okay, yeah. And then also again onto the podium, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to call upon one gentleman who's very well accomplished in the world of wildlife. He is one of the managers of the parks in Zimbabwe. So if you want to know what the lions say when they say, he's the guy to tell you that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Gandiwa. Honorable Minister and Your Excellency, I think I would like for the room really to give a very strong round of applause for the next participant in our discussion. Please help me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome the reigning Destination Manager of the Year, Miss Winnie Muchanyuka. She is the Chief Executive at the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority. And of course, I welcome you, ladies and gentlemen. Winnie, good evening. Please, if you could just pull your mic close to you. Yeah, the one on your left. Yeah, I think that one will work better. Okay.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you. Did you hear the sound of a winner? Nicholas, good evening. Welcome. It's this one. Yes.
Good evening.
Say that again.
I didn't lose my bag, but good evening.
And of course, Professor, how are you?
Guten Abend. Good evening. I'm good, thank you.
All right, guys, let's get right into it because I saw some very lovely food out there. So I want us to, get this investment thing out of the way so we can do the real investment. Let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So I know Germans are people who love to enjoy their art, they enjoy their music. Nicholas, let me just give you this very first bit of this discussion, maybe a minute or so, just to tell us a little bit about the arts industry and how it's looking at the moment. I know the minister touched on it a little bit, but just to shed a bit more light so that when we come deeper to look for the investment opportunities, we know what it is that we're talking about.
Thank you, Chief. I take this opportunity to recognize the Minister, the Honorable Minister, who is our guest of honor and guest speaker tonight. Allow me also to recognize Your Excellency, Umama Mashingaidze, and Don Fred, the head of this institution. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I didn't expect that I will be the first to speak. But you know, what's very important is that when we are here at this Institute of Cultural Diplomacy, it is important, I think it's not a mistake, that we start with a cultural presentation. That as a country, it is correct and true that it's not just the beauty of the land, but it's the beauty of the people. It's the beauty of the Zimbabweans that we are here to present. When we look at the art, the minister is very correct. Using the UNESCO instruments and measures, it was established that Zimbabwe, the creative industry contributes about 6% to the GDP. And it is a fact that the world has turned around and many economies rely on the creative sector. The film, dance, music, visual arts, advertising, fashion do play a great part in the investment of different economies, and Zimbabwe is not different. I'm here to also say it's a green area. It's an area that is ready for investment. There are quite a number, I think as we go on, there will be quite a number of issues that we want to discuss. And I'm aware that one of the major issues that Germany has pride in is the issues of crafts and stone sculpture that comes from Zimbabwe. We happen to be one of the few, if not the only country whose stone sculpture is found all over the world. There are many airports that are proud to display Zimbabwean stone sculpture work. There are many countries and many towns. We have one city called Carmel in the Americas that actually has a day when they celebrate one of our own artists called Dominic Benura because of the type of the stone sculpture that he does. And for me, it's one of the areas that is fresh and still green for people to come and invest. I don't know whether that was 2 minutes or 3 minutes.
I had actually said 1 minute, but shall we move on to the good professor? Thank you very much, Nick, for giving us that perspective, that view. I think the creative sector is one that is really growing in the country. And I must tell you guys, as far as music is concerned, you cannot do better than Zimbabwe. Trust me, okay? You need to come to Zimbabwe to see that. But let me give the good professor a moment, perhaps, to just share a little bit about his area of expertise and how that is contributing into developing Zimbabwe. And hopefully we'll get into the details of what our fellow friends from the German community can do to assist you in this drive.
Thank you so much, Koti. Distinguished delegates, let me just take this moment to also honor our guest of honor, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu, and also our Ambassador, Your Excellency, and our hosts this evening. All protocols observed. So in terms of my background, I'm basically much more anchored in wildlife conservation. I have a PhD in wildlife conservation from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. But back home, I play the role of being Director Scientific Services within the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Management Authority. So I will focus more on the broader aspects of wildlife conservation in Zimbabwe, which I think is what we are discussing and what, as a delegation, we are also showcasing to see areas of cooperation. So Zimbabwe, as has been indicated already by the guest of honor, is in Southern Africa, and it has a spatial coverage of 390,000 square kilometers. And out of that, 28% is under conservation. So we have conservation basically in three main categories. We have what we call the state areas, or the Parks and Wildlife Estate, which Zimparks manages. So in that domain, 13% is basically protected, where we have day-to-day oversight in terms of wildlife conservation. The next domain is communal area, which constitutes about 11%. And I'm sure many of you have heard about the Communal Areas Management Program for Indigenous Resources, in acronym we call CAMFIRE, which has been one of the 4 runners of community-based conservation across Africa. So there it's 11%. And then the remaining is basically under private areas. So these are conservancies. And nowadays they also covered by what we call transfunder conservation areas, which is another layer which covers the state, the private, and the communal areas. So in managing that, I'm sure, as the video which played earlier showed, Zimbabwe, we pride ourselves in having the second largest elephant herd, over 83,000 elephants in a country, which is something which we pride ourselves. So that's the second largest elephant population after Botswana. And we also have the big 5, elephants included, the rhinos. We have just hit over 1,000 rhinos as of last year, which is a significant milestone for Zimbabwe, given that we were in COVID, but we were still doing very well. We have the buffalo, which I'm sure in terms of art is also depicted in art and culture. Then for the carnivores, we have the lion, which we also have in abundance. I'm sure we'll also discuss much even in the cultural aspects. And then last of the big 5 is the leopard, which we also have in big abundance. As a country, over 70% is also benefiting from nature-based tourism. So the inflows that come, mostly over 70%, is much more attracted by also the wildlife resource. So that shows us that this is anchoring the key aspects that our honorable guests indicated to us. But more importantly, wildlife by it's a business. That's an area where we have opportunities to invest in the management of the parks we have, the conservancies, and also diversification, product diversification in CAMFIRE areas. So we see opportunities that we will also discuss further in terms of, we know Germany, as part of the EU, also participates. We have some much more consumptive hunters that come from this destination, coming to Zimbabwe, some for consumptive, others for non-consumptive. So we have opportunities which we feel are very, very much important as we move forward. I will just, as I conclude in this first part, we have German investors that are already in Zimbabwe. I'm sure many of us know the Frankfurt Zoological Society. We are working with them in one of the second largest park in Zimbabwe, Gonarezhou National Park. We have formed a co-management system or model where we are managing the park for the next 20 years. Hopefully we will be able then to also renew. And now we have been bringing in revenue through that co-management to be able to sustain the populations that we have in the second largest park, but also bring more benefits to the communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that elaborate explanation and just introduction of what it is that you guys do at the Zimparks. We call them Zimparks for short, so yeah, he's the parks guy. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give Miss Winnie an opportunity also to just give us, in a nutshell, what the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority is all about, and perhaps a bit on the destination.
Thank you, Chief Koti. Let me recognize our Honorable Minister, as well as Your Excellency, the Ambassador for Zimbabwe here in Germany, and all distinguished guests that are here today. And thank you for the German hospitality, besides the cold. But we've had a wonderful time here at the ITB. We had opportunity to showcase what Zimbabwe has. And the short video that was played earlier is only a snippet of what Zimbabwe is all about and what you could see or experience when you come to Zimbabwe. The gentlemen here have already alluded to some of what is available in Zimbabwe, our wildlife. He's spoken about the people and the culture, but they're also natural formations. I think the Victoria Falls is on every single person's bucket list. It's one place that they would like to visit. But let me tell you that there is more to Zimbabwe than the Victoria Falls. We can't take away the beauty of the Victoria Falls, but let me tell you that there are other gems around Zimbabwe. The Lake Kariba, the most beautiful place to spend your Christmas. That's where I was over Christmas. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The Eastern Highlands, the natural formations that we have, the rivers, hidden gems. There's lots of cute places that are in everyone's backyard. And I invite you to Zimbabwe to come and see some of these places. Yes, visit the Victoria Falls, go to all the iconic places. But let me tell you, there are street restaurants that you must experience some of our street food. Go to one of the local bars and enjoy the hospitality and the friendly people that we speak about. We don't speak about us being very nice people, but because we are nice people, come to Zimbabwe and you can experience that. I am a nice person, if I should say so myself. But there are plenty of me in Zimbabwe that you should come to and interact with. But I know that Zimbabwe is not new to the Germans. I mean, the Germans are number 3 in our ranking of visitors to Zimbabwe. But even as they are third, we would want them to be first. So I'm inviting more people to come to Zimbabwe. And having said so, we would like the destination that Zimbabwe is to grow, and for us to have more for you to do and for you to enjoy when you come to Zimbabwe. So we have investment opportunities within the tourism sector that we can talk about. The minister alluded in his speech to areas where you have opportunity to invest, convention centers, even hotels, from private lodges to 5-star hotel or 7-star hotels. If you can do it, you're welcome to invest in Zimbabwe for that. Recreational facilities, theme parks, casinos, these are all areas where you could invest in. Activity-based businesses, we also welcome that. Anything to give us an opportunity to stay longer in Zimbabwe is very welcome. I think as an introduction, Chief Koti, that is what tourism in Zimbabwe is about.
Thank you very much. That's what she gets up to when she's not winning awards, yeah? So I'm going to start with the guy for arts, yeah? How many of us here drink beer? Beer? Okay, for those that are not from Zimbabwe, when you do get to Zimbabwe, please do try the Zambezi lager. Say Zambezi.
Zambezi.
Don't forget it, okay? Right, Mr. Moy, Nicholas, I will refer to you as Nicholas today. You've spoken about the arts sector, with quite deep passion. I could tell from your voice there that you're a man who has been involved in this for a while. But while it is accepted that the arts and culture sector is a critical component in any nation's economy, what are the major concrete steps that probably Zimbabwe has undertaken to position the sector into the mainstream economy? I think it's an important story for us to hear as we try to find those symbiotic partnerships going ahead.
Thank you, Chief. We call him Chief. Thank you, Chief. And also, before I answer that question, the best beer in Zimbabwe is OPEC beer. I'm a cultural man. So the traditional brew is what, when you come to Zimbabwe, ask for it. Sample it out. It's food and drink. That said, efforts that the government of Zimbabwe has actually put in place is the creation of policies. Government's policy environment is designed to allow players, mainly private players, civil society players, to be able to engage in business in the creative sector without impediment, without any other challenges. I think we saw the video from the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency that talks about the statutory infrastructure that allows investment, where people who come and invest in Zimbabwe can enjoy the returns thereof. two key policy measures that Zimbabwe has pushed in the last few years post-COVID. Why I talk about post-COVID is because the realization of operating in the digital environment becomes very key. Things have changed over time. The digital environment is the space for people to invest. And the government has supported the creation of a music policy and film policy. The minister alluded to those as the low-hanging fruits. Zimbabwe is inviting creative investors to use Zimbabwe as a location. We have had quite a number of major films that were shot in Zimbabwe in the 80s, in the 90s, and the early 2000s. Zimbabwe is a very beautiful scenery. Coming to Zimbabwe and signing what we call co-productions could be the way to go. Zimbabwe has put a policy that also allows investors that come specifically for film to be able to bring in and take out different film gears without any cost, because it benefits the country. And whatever products can then be put into circuits within Africa and also in international screens. That's area number one of the film policy. It's being driven to ensure that it creates employment, but at the same time to dovetail with the issues of tourism and ensure that issues also of our wildlife through the presentation of different types of films and documentaries. You may want to know that a lot of documentaries that you see on geographical channels are shot in Zimbabwe. It is one of the huge economic fronts in terms of documentaries, where at times people see these beautiful periods when lions are chasing up and catching and enjoying the wildlife. People go and sit in wildlife for weeks in order to capture those moments. Zimbabwe has been that destination for those geographical films that you see. The second, Chief Koti, has been the issue of film, of music. Government has created an environment that brings out specific policies around music. Greatest platforms have been going digital. I think even Germany, there are many challenges that people have faced with either digital platforms that not so much is coming back into the country, because when it's digital, there's not been much control to that. But Zimbabwe has also created an opportunity to invite investors to come and invest in the digital environment, to create platforms for the sale and consumption of music products. So those two are what I could point out as policies that Zimbabwe has created and established to attract more investment into the area, because there is guaranteed consumption.
Fantastic. Thank you so much there, Nick, for being so elaborate about those policies and what government is currently looking at. And I think this really dovetails with the issue of MICE tourism. I think maybe we may touch on it a little later, but when I look at it, I believe, especially from a music and tourism combination, there's space for investment as far as the infrastructure is concerned. I know he's got the artists, plenty of them, and they're doing quite well actually, but perhaps you're not providing enough venues for these artists to enjoy. Maybe if you could just touch a little bit on MICE and that combination with arts and the opportunities that probably rise from there.
I think coming out of COVID, a realization of many destinations is that the tourism business or the tourism economy will be sustained by MICE tourism, because any kind of business is going to a need for people to meet. It's going to, for conferencing facilities, for exhibitions. We are here because of an exhibition that is happening in Berlin. So these are the drivers that there will be for tourism. And events are very much a part of that. And even as events to entertain us, as music, as you allude to, those would be critical. So for us in Zimbabwe, a huge space that we would welcome investment is that of multi-purpose venues, and that can be used for events, for exhibitions, for conferencing, and so on. And these would be at key points around the country, in Harare, in Bulawayo, in Victoria Falls. And as we've been going around the world since COVID opened, and we've been re-engaging, this has come up several times that people would love to come to Zimbabwe, but sometimes we find ourselves limited because the venues that we have currently within our infrastructure do not permit us to have crowds that are larger than X number. So we would want to see investment come through to Zimbabwe for venues that would take upwards of 2,000 people. Then we would be able to host quite comfortably some of these events.
I think that's one area that is really open for collaboration, and also, guys, I think this is something that you can look into if you're into this business or this kind of business. If you're willing to get into it, these guys are here for you to talk to them. Nick, I'm going to come back to you once again. You've spoken very elaborately about the music and the film culture, but are there any other opportunities that lie within your space, where people can possibly leave the room tonight saying, you know what, I think I may actually have a partner that I can take to Zimbabwe to go and meet with Nick based on these opportunities that he has opened for us?
Thank you, Chief. One other major thing that I would like to pause here, it's an area that Zimbabwe has not fully explored, is the issue of biennales. I think if you understand business in the visual arts, what turns around a lot of visual arts in the world is investment through various biennales, art biennales. I think the greatest one being Venice Biennale, the second biggest being the Beijing Biennale, where the value of the art changes. For example, one of our artists that we were able to take to Venice, I think 4 years ago, Portia, when he went to Venice, her artwork was selling for about 3,000. And last year, one of her pieces fetched 120,000 US dollars. It's the potential of art. The world is full of art buyers that wait for these events all over the world that they visit just for art buying. And as a country, we have muted, and we are into discussion in trying to ensure that we put up most likely the first art biennale in Southern Africa. Zimbabwe is very critical. We also take advantage that the organization that I represent, for example, Honorable Minister, the National Arts Council of Zimbabwe, has been the lead agency of arts in Southern Africa. Over the last 25 years, we assisted the formation of the Arts Council of South Africa. We assisted in the formation of the Arts Council of Zambia, Seychelles, Namibia, Botswana, and just recently in February, we had a delegation from the National Arts Council of Namibia that was in the country for a week. So we've remained key in the development of the arts in the region. And we want to take the leadership and ensure that we launch the first art biennale maybe in 2024. So it's one of the areas that are very key and very important. So we will see most of our visual arts. But The other issue is what Winnie raised. Infrastructural development is an area that Zimbabwe requires investment in, for multi-purpose facilities. I think ZTA can also attest that now the biggest crowd pulling event happens in December in Victoria Falls, the Victoria Falls Carnival. Chief Koti knows more about it. People travel all over the world. We have a lot of tourists just coming for the arts. But the challenge also has been the infrastructure to be able to hold those thousands of people coming from across the world.
Well, I only know about the carnival because of the beer, okay? Like you said. But I want to keep the spotlight on you, Nick, and then I'll move to my good professor here. You touched a little bit on Dominic Benura, who's one of our finest sculptors in the country. But there's a whole industry that is untapped. Yeah. Perhaps if you could just shed a bit of light on how we can partake in this world of sculpture. I traveled to Turkey a couple of years back, maybe 3 years ago, and I saw some amazing pieces there from sculptures, that are pretty much unknown in the country, but they were fetching huge sums of dollars. How best can we collaborate with the outside world to bring this industry into the picture, and how can they help you in terms of investment?
I think one quick, thank you, Chief Koti, on that. One quick area of collaboration is amongst galleries. I think Berlin ambassador, you may attest to this. Germany has quite a number of galleries that are in partnership with different arts institutions in Zimbabwe, and that we promote. And when we have formal arrangements, I think, Honorable Minister, these are some of the things then that we work to ensure that there is that gateway for ensuring that our finished products, I think the Minister alluded to the issue that beneficiation is one of the key issues that we want to focus on, because there's been a time when we see a lot of export of raw stone, and when you take out raw stone, you then bring either to Germany an artist, a sculptor, to then come and work on the raw stone. It's important that when these things are done with particular galleries, then there is a formal agreement between the two countries, so that we ensure that it is, if it's the stone that is raw stone that has come from Zimbabwe, it is worked by Zimbabwean artists, because all over the world there is a lot of people that move from one country to another, either as expatriates. We export a lot of professionals throughout the world, but much more being the export of finished stonework. Dominic is just one example, but many more. For me, it's the arrangement between galleries and galleries in Zimbabwe, either led by the National Gallery of Zimbabwe or the private galleries that are there. And as government, we then support and ensuring that export, there is a gateway that makes benefit to both the investor and the country.
There goes the man who loves the opaque beer.
Yes.
He is definitely available online. I'm sure he will share his details and that of his team. Should you be interested in the world of arts and culture within the sphere of this beautiful country that we call a world of wonders. Now I'm going to switch my attention to the good professor here. He's been awfully quiet, but I know that they are very much, interlinked with these two that are here. Perhaps, Prof, I could just start by asking the significance of wildlife in Zimbabwe's tourism industry, and how you've been going at sustaining it? Because there's a lot of talk about, I know, there's too much hunting, or there's too much killing of animals, or there's this and there's that. And Zimbabwe has been in the spotlight, unfortunately, for the wrong reasons. Maybe you can take this opportunity to clarify if these reasons are actually true or not.
Thank you very much. Very interesting questions. So in terms of what we do in terms of sustainable use and also the conservation, I'm sure all of us here are much more used now to the global dimension about wildlife being regarded as a global good. And this is justified to some extent, but it's day-to-day management, the burden then falls to the states that have those animals. So here I mean that I'm sure you are all aware that, for instance, many of you may have heard about Sisi with the lion. That was, hunted some time back, and there was news across the globe to say someone had killed a lion, and why was that happening? So Zimbabwe, we practice what we call sustainable utilization. So conservation, by its nature, tells us that we have to keep the resource, but also benefit from it for present and future generations. So what we use normally is adaptive management. So all our decisions are based on science. And as I introduced myself earlier, I come from the conservation science, but scientific services. So every year we do surveys of our wildlife estate, both in the private, communal, and also in the state areas. This helps us to understand the numbers, because when you are dealing with wildlife, you need to know the numbers and where the animals are. So that brings in a lot of challenge in terms of the resource we need to manage. So it's something that we feel, in as much as we have all sentiments that people have nowadays with social media. We see animals and then people say you should not do this, but this is about ethics and also about the science we use. And for Zimbabwe, we stand by the national constitution, which is that provision for sustainable use, and also the Parks and Wildlife Act allows us to do that. So we do it in a scientific way, which is more transparent and justified. Each year we set quotas, which are also determined, some of them by CITES. And we do abide by the best international practice. So this, even at many of the international conventions, which are more to do with conservation, we always present the facts. And our aerial survey reports are also available, which can actually be peer-reviewed. But moving forward, I think where we may feel we need then to be cooperating with Germany and also the other key players are the issues of wildlife management. Wildlife management, by its own nature, is an expensive venture. Animals, where they occur mostly in an area for national parks which is well defined. But many of some, at times, the boundaries may not be fenced, which then have challenges to do with human-wildlife conflict. You can imagine managing elephants. An elephant a day, it can travel around 70 kilometers a day. So it's in a park, and just few hours it's in the community. So we need also to secure boundaries that make sure that the animals, somehow they are kept in a nice, safe way. Where they go, we have to define the areas as corridors, and we need to be working together with communities and all those that are in those areas. So that's one area. Managing wildlife, we need to invest in the law enforcement, in securing the park's boundaries, but more importantly, we need also to develop our infrastructure for roads to do the law enforcement, the anti-poaching, but also roads are needed for tourism, ecotourism. So this is an area where we feel it's one where we need to ensure that our infrastructure for conservation, which benefits tourism, actually are also key. We also need the revenue to deal with law enforcement, or also meeting the salary bills of those that are doing conservation. And where does the money come from? Mostly it comes from, as impacts, we self-generate revenue, but also we also get support from our government. But what is critical is that the most revenue sources include tourism, which is ecotourism to us. This consumptive utilization, which is also hunting, which becomes a very, very important aspect to us. We also have other areas of potential investment. Our guest of honor is leading us in developing a carbon framework, carbon credit framework, which will also be a good opportunity to also have the best companies and also players coming and also working with us in Zimbabwe. habitats, we are conserving habitats, we are also helping with all these climate change issues as we conserve our wildlife. And then the issue of tourism infrastructure within the parks and wildlife estate and also communities. When these wildlife, they are also living in the same landscape, adjacent to it will be the communal areas. We cannot conserve this wildlife when our communities are poor. There's a saying that your chickens are not safe when you are with a poor neighbor. So we need also to ensure that the communal areas are also enhanced in terms of their community conservation initiatives. That's a big area of investment. And our honorable minister here is leading even the campfire revitalization, where we are able to, perhaps with this discussion here, also have some potential investment in communal areas where we can come in and build the capacity for communities through their own ecotourism ventures, even setting up wildlife ranches. And this helps to ensure that we are spreading the cake widely from the state protected areas to communal areas which have lodges and also wildlife ventures. So these are some of the key areas where we feel we need support. As I conclude, the issue of trade, I think there has been a lot of in the media where Southern African countries, Zimbabwe included, where we feel that we have the wildlife products. For example, ivory, which I think in art is well depicted, even the arts. But we feel it's a resource which, as we manage the resource, we also need to benefit, unlock value out of it. Either unlocking value through the modernization of even having museums which can actually be buying some of those, or having models which are coming from this part of the world. Lastly, issues of technology transfer. I'm sure if you are in Europe with this weather, it may be very difficult even to at times go out and see animals. But in Africa, you need to go and see animals. I know, here it's easy to travel because you are always using, the special tools, your Google Maps, etc. But we also need to be able to manage our wildlife using the best technology. We need to know where the animals are, because some of it is high value. We are managing a rhino. We need to be able to track. So issues of satellite, GPS, collaring, all these we feel is something that we may benefit, particularly from developed countries. Issues of technology transfer in wildlife conservation, which at the end of the day benefits us in terms of knowing where the animals are, keeping them safe, but also safeguarding the lives of our communities so that we can predict where the animals are and reduce human-wildlife conflict. So these are potential areas which we can further debate and also discuss. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Perhaps since we're in Germany, I know you're working with German partners within the area of Gonarejo, which is one of the biggest national parks in the country, the biggest concentration also of elephants. How has that been, the relationship been? I mean, just for the benefit of people who are in the house who may want to know, their fellow Germans are out there. I know a guy called Hugo, very passionate about elephants. These Germans, Minister. They love them. So I think perhaps just for you to shed light on the nature of that relationship and how it's been going and how best we can improve and get more people coming through to assist you. Very briefly, Prof.
Thank you very much. In terms of Germany, we know besides the EU, where Germany is a big player there, we have two main organizations that are working in Zimbabwe. Rightly so, the Frankfurt Zoological Society. We have been a good partner in conservation for Zimbabwe since the early 1980s. They were in Zimbabwe just supporting conservation. But in 2007, Frankfurt Zoological Society came to Zimbabwe, and particularly to Gonarejo National Park, and started up supporting conservation on a technical and financial basis. So they were just supporting the activities that were in the park. Fortunately, I was also the resident ecologist in Gonarejo at that time. And they would give us support in terms of all the resources we needed for law enforcement, for aerial surveys, and also supporting our own patrol efforts, which was something very, very important. And then through the guidance of our ministry, in 2016, we then upgraded the relationship into a co-management relationship. And we have now formed what we call the Gonarejo Conservation Trust. So this is a 50-50 joint partnership where the Frankfurt Zoological Society is actually helping us in terms of fundraising. And only last year, we were able to receive the legacy landscape funding. That is €1 million every year for the next 15 years. And only last week, we also got funding from KFW through the SADC TFC financing $3 million coming to Gonaresho. And if you go to the park now, the park is a pride. We were able to reintroduce rhinos. They had gone into local extinction in 1991 in the park. In 2020, we reintroduced 40 rhinos back into the park. So that's now the park is the Big Five, which is a big draw card. Previously, the park used to receive about 10,000 tourists per year. Over the past few years, the park is now reaching about 20,000 tourists coming into the park every year. And in terms of law enforcement, it's one of the best parks in Zimbabwe, because before Frankfurt came, we were using about $50 per square kilometer per year for the whole park. Now we are almost $250 per square kilometer to cover the park. So this is something which is significant. Then there is another German institution, Away German. I'm sure many of you may be aware of it. They are also helping us in conserving our rhinos in the Chipinge Safari area. So we are now discussing upgrading their investment. They are putting in currently about €200,000 per year. Starting once we are able to sign the agreement through our ministry, starting this year, they want to upgrade their investment to about €600,000 per year. So these are typical example of German institutions, besides the EU funding, that are directly involved in wildlife conservation. And to us as Zimbabwe, we are very much, grateful, and we are also, opening up even to the other protected areas, and also the communal areas and private areas. We also have other German investors that are in Sawe Valley Conservancy, also putting in a lot of investment in terms of wildlife conservation. This has contributed to Zimbabwe having particularly if you look at elephants, the second elephant population and also our rhino population to be reaching beyond 1,000, which is the fourth largest population in Africa. So we are very much grateful to Germany and also the investment that is coming to Zimbabwe. And we hope as Zimpax and also the government of Zimbabwe, we can still unlock more so that we all protect the resource, we all benefit the conservation community, but more importantly, the resources is also to go to the communities who are also at the forefront of conserving the wildlife. Thank you, Koti.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think we are very grateful to the German society and the community that is working in Zimbabwe at the moment. And the idea here is to invite as many as possible within our various sectors where you can come through and invest. Please do get this website down. It's zidainvest.com. zidainvest.com. So that's where you can go and find out more opportunities that are available for you to invest in the country, in other sectors that are probably beyond tourism, wildlife, as well as arts and culture, and many others. But more so, you can actually go to our embassy here. You will meet Her Excellency and her team. They are willing to assist you to come into Zimbabwe and see the business opportunities that are there. I know there are many players that are within the tourism sector that are of a German origin. Most of them, they came to Zimbabwe and decided to stay. So what are the opportunities, Ms. Winnie, that probably are available within the tourism sector?
Thanks, Chief Koti. I think I'd mentioned earlier the areas of multi-purpose venues, but I think there's a wide spectrum of areas where we can invest, because we would like for the destination to grow and to give visitors to Zimbabwe more reason to stay and for them to stay longer. So I did mention that in the area of entertainment, nightlife, restaurants, lifestyle investment, spas. These are opportunities that we have available to invest in tourism. We also have accommodation facilities, anything from private lodges, boutique hotels, right up to 5-star hotels. There is opportunity to invest in those areas. Transportation, tour buses, That's another area where you can have opportunity to invest. But really, anything within the tourism sector, there is a space for investors to participate in.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Thank you to my panel here. I'm just going to open the floor a little bit. If there are any burning questions where you need comments, I know we're going to, go downstairs and enjoy a drink or two while we interact and network. But if there are any burning questions that you may have here, please just show by raise of hands, and then we'll bring a mic to you. There's a gentleman here in the front. Okay, there we go. Thank you, sir.
All protocols observed. My name is Kumbira Ichpadza from Deutsche Connect. We're based in Germany. Thank you very much for enlightening us. In our business, we also realize that Germany, despite the Marshall Plan for Africa, only does 2% of its trade with Africa, even less so with Zimbabwe, as indicated by the minister. One of the gaps that is there is said by the head of the German companies, and his name is Sigmund Rasvam, was that most German companies have not been to Africa. So because of that, okay. So most German companies have never been to Africa. So you cannot invest in something that you don't really know. So as a company, we have a concept that's already being done in Namibia, what we call startup safari, where it can be not for startups, but it can also be for companies, where you invite companies in certain sectors, let's say to Zimbabwe, to Vic Falls, or maybe to Great Zimbabwe, different areas. So they're coming to visit Zimbabwe, but they're also coming to talk about investment. So that it's not only a song we sing about let's invest, but without them being on the ground. So I think it's not a question, but more of a contribution to say, let's take them to Zimbabwe so that they see for themselves and then do not hear. Because sometimes some of the things that they hear is not what is the true ground situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that note, we actually do have a direct flight from here, right? Frankfurt into Namibia and then Vic Falls. Yeah, so please do come. Gentlemen here next to me. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. All protocols observed. Thank you very much. Brilliant presentation. Fantastic. My first question is that I'm Theodas. I'm a CEO of Success Lighter here in Germany and CEO of Success Lighter Private Limited in Zimbabwe. And I'm also a strategist of V-Stationery, which is investment in Zimbabwe, with his partner, sister company, Tona Dumping here. The key question that is always difficult for me as a consultant to answer is the guarantee of the return on investment. It's very easy to put money in Zimbabwe, but very difficult to pull it out. So if you could work on that. And also another thing is that there are special economic zones, but you give them to big players who actually don't need them. So we are here, we have pool of investors who want to come to Zimbabwe. Like for example, our high quality products, right? We have a potential of supplying the whole of SADC. Only if we are allowed to get them direct in Zimbabwe without paying too much duty or anything, we are able now to supply the whole of SADC. So what can you do to make it easier for us to easily invest? Because once we are there, once we put our product on the ground, we can supply the whole of SADC. But right now, we are doing a preliminary research. Already Tanzania is telling us you can come, put your warehouse there, you don't pay anything and supply the whole of SADC. But trying to go to Zimbabwe, they already want to also have a piece of it before we even benefit from that. So how can we get that assurance? And also the issue of title deeds. When you buy land, you get a cession from council, then you are told it's not a proper title deed. How can you make it just easier that once we get land, we have proper title deeds from the word go? Thank you.
I'm not sure if that was a question or a comment. So I'm trying to see where I can refer it, but I can see the minister really frantically trying to type on his phone to take down the note and take it back to where it's supposed to be taken. But I'm going to give him an opportunity perhaps later to just shed a bit of light on it. But I think these are very valid questions that you ask, very pertinent and very key to anyone who wants to come and invest. I'm going to give Brenda an opportunity to come through.
Good evening. My question is, when we want to invest, we want transparency. What form of transparency can you give us? I can add on to what Theodos just said, is when we come as investors, you have your rule of law in Zimbabwe. Is there something that you can show us when we come and you tell us these are our rules, without having to go through different offices and getting different answers of a question which maybe you can, online here in Germany, for example, you can get all the rules that you need as an investor in Germany online. This information is readily available. Is there any form of way that you can make this information for us easily accessible? And I also believe that that also minimizes corruption.
Thank you very much, Brenda, for that question. I think the website that I gave you earlier on, that's the place to go for those kind of questions. I think it's got pretty much everything. Perhaps, Winnie, you would like to add on to that?
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience definitely from tourism and investment that has been coming through tourism and many other sectors in our economy. They have a specialist representative at the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency that can answer specific questions to the area in which you want to invest. And I would say contact the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, address your issues. I think sometimes when we come up with something that is outside the norm, because we're innovative, we are coming across so many opportunities as we progress in business. So something might not be written down at that point, but it does not mean that it cannot be done. So we have a representative that has been seconded from the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority that sits at ZIDA and will answer questions that pertain to tourism. So you don't have to go to a manufacturing person to talk about tourism. So you would have a representative that can take you through the paces. And my experience with the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency is that they will walk you through the different offices, if at all there are. They will walk you through those processes so that you can be registered and you would be able to go ahead with your investment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winnie. Any questions? Yeah, there's a lady right at the back. Oh, thank you so much.
Good evening. My German name is Kerstin Hemka. My Zimbabwean name is Amai Ogogo Moyo.
Please go ahead, Gogo Moyo.
I want to emphasize, I'm talking on behalf of the German Zimbabwe Society. It's one of those friendship societies founded in the 1980s to promote the friendship between Zimbabwean and German people. And I think we do quite a good job, Brenda, do we?
Yes.
She's one of our members. So, knowing that we were invited, thanks to Mr. Ngwenya, to this venue tonight, I wrote yesterday to the German embassy in Harare and was asking on the issue of investment. And the answer was very interesting. I think the German embassy or the German government is making a bit of mistake, not like France or Switzerland promoting investment into Zimbabwe. I think it's really worth to do. And I can only say it's a wonderful idea, and I will go with you and promote Zimbabwe when we invite people who want to invest in Zimbabwe. I'm in Zimbabwe. I came just after independence, and I was working for the old President Mugabe. I was translating for him, and I'm really a friend of Zimbabwe. But what can I tell to German people who want to invest on the question of guarantee of investment? That's really a key issue. That's what also the embassy. You know Musangano.
Yes.
You know the problems Musangano had. Musangano is a lodge by Germans that was bought after independence, so it's not old country. But they had a lot of problems. Even the last year, when there was an invasion from Chinese and Belarus diggers who were destroying everything. You see, when you have got German visitors who see this and come back to Germany and tell this, then it's not a good advertisement for Zimbabwe. So I think in cases like this, also from this side of environment, you should support those people who really are friends of Zimbabwe and who try to promote. And I think that's very important. And German Zimbabwe Society can help you to bring this to German people. Because when somebody wants to go to Zimbabwe, you cannot imagine how many people phone us and say, hey, can we come for tourism? So I said, of course you can. Zimbabwe is more safe than it is South Africa. I'm always happy when I'm out of South Africa, coming to Kumusha, to Zimbabwe, and I'm relaxed. Yeah, that's really one of the wonderful things. But I think the question of guarantee of investment, and also, you see, I will just give an example. In 2019, I have every year groups of tourists. I go next week to Zimbabwe, and in 2 weeks, a group of 17 people will come to Zimbabwe. And you see what we do. We do visiting all the wonderful artists. I just published a new catalogue about Zimbabwean stone sculptures. But don't forget the women. I just published, and Her Excellency will open the exhibition of Nonkan Khamate from Bulawayo. It's done together with the National Gallery of Zimbabwe. So that's what we are going to show to our visitors in Zimbabwe. But really, yeah, just make use of us. We really try. You see, I'm since 41 years in Zimbabwe. I had wonderful dark hair when I came, and it's not gray because of Zimbabwe, but only of my age. Okay, but I think really to be open to support investment and not to make decisions like in 2019. That was the story I wanted to tell. I had a group of 20 people coming to Zimbabwe on the 25th of June 2019. 4 days before I left, I got the information you are no longer allowed to use US dollars. That really was, if I would not have had so many friends in Zimbabwe who helped me with their private credit cards so that I could use RTGS, because as a foreigner, I don't have a bank account, and I can't get a bank account. So that are things for tourism that are very, very difficult. I always tell you, never get old when you are in Zimbabwe. It's full of magic and surprise, but don't make too much surprise. Thank you. Thank you.
We are not going to make too much surprise. Don't worry, Mbuya. It's Kokoma Moyo. Thank you so much. Let's give you another round of applause.
I'm a little bit elder. That is my young wife. She is the real boss of the German Zimbabwe Society, or Deutsche Zimbabwische Gesellschaft. We have a very, very good website, all organized by friends. They are not on the list as professions in the German Zimbabwe Society. They are very, very solidary with Zimbabwe. These are our partners. We need members, not only Germans, like you and the others, where the Kumusha is in Zimbabwe. Okay, we invite you. We send you all the information what we are doing in Germany and in Zimbabwe. And where is my new friend, the minister? I think there. We meet in Bulawayo. And then we talk about all the possibilities you presented this evening. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else that's burning? Okay, there's a lady there at the back. Please go ahead. Just tell us your name, ma'am.
My name is Jane Saidi. I'm into the health sector, and in the health sector, you treat patients. But I think, Professor, you've changed my mind. I want to treat animals. And I would like to challenge you. I want to invest in animal pharmacy.
All right.
There we go. Prof, you have one investor that you've put in your bag. I know we've got some that are interested in tourism and culture. I think they've done an amazing job for you there, Nick. If you read that book, it's written in German, but it's profiling all the activities that culture has to offer within Zimbabwe, Bulawayo, Harare, Marsh East, and all sorts of provinces. So please do get a copy as you are going out to make sure that you understand our culture and our sculpture businesses as well. Are there any other comments or questions that you may have that you may want to ask now, or you can come direct to my panelist here? My minister is here as well. Her Excellency, the ambassador, is here, and there's a whole team as well where you can come. Yes, sir? The beer is getting warm. I like that. That's my man. Brenda, the beer is getting warm. Please.
One last question.
Yeah.
Prof, you were talking about a partnership with the Frankfurter Zoo.
Yes.
Is this a partnership that you send animals to the Frankfurt Zoo, or you are teaching them how we do it? And what I most proud, what makes me so proud being Zimbabweans, allowing animals to live freely in the world.
Thank you very much. So, very interesting perspective. So, we are working with the Frankfurt Zoological Society. They are not those with the zoo. And the Frankfurt Zoological Society have a tremendous history of conservation support in Africa. I think besides Zimbabwe, they are also in Serengeti. I think for over 40 years there now, and also in North Luangwa in Zambia. So with them, they are in Zimbabwe as per the Zimbabwean terms. The provision that our honorable minister here, supersedes in terms of the Parks and Wildlife Act. So with Zimbabwe, we don't send animals for zoos, and only unless it's under the CITES provisions. So we are not with them to send animals to zoos. We are for in situ conservation, which is in Zimbabwe. But we also have provisions under CITES where necessary. But with them, it's basically building and making sure that conservation in Gwenarejo is much more to the best. I think that helps clarify that. Thank you very much.
On that note, guys, I think the beer really will get cold. So, well, it's too cold, guys. It will still get cold. There's snow out there. So it leaves me with great pleasure just to thank our panelists. Thank you so much, Prof. Gandiwa. Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, my very learned brother here, Nick Moyo. And the reigning destination manager of the year, Miss Winnie. Thank you very much, guys. It's been great standing here in front of you, talking to you. We really appreciate you. Please do come and invest in Zimbabwe and visit Zimbabwe. So now, about the beer. The minister just wants to clarify one or two things from what was raised here. So we're going to give him the floor to do so. And then I'm going to call Elita to come back again and take us to the next bit of the program. If I can have a microphone for the minister.
Oh, yes.
Honorable, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, no, they can be walking down.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. For the avoidance of giving you my back, I'll stand here. I just thought it's important that we touch on the few issues that have been highlighted. Otherwise, there's no point in making people ask and you don't respond.
Yes.
So the first one, Theo, the CEO of many companies. I think we need to talk. I'll soon be job hunting. Excuse me. You raised some critical issues. The first one is on, I think it's guarantee on the repatriation of your investment rather than return on investment, more clearer. I think I have to acknowledge first that we've come a long way as a country. There were times when really we faced some challenges, especially with our foreign currency movements. But I can give you the comfort that with some of the policies that we have taken in the last 3 to 4 years, we started with the TSP, where we were trying to stabilize the economy. That's where I think Kokomamo had some of the challenges, where we felt at some point that there was a lot of externalization of foreign currency that was there, and we had to put measures to put a halt to that. I would have loved to have some of the investors who are currently investing in Zimbabwe would have given testimony that those challenges are really at the moment not there. You are now able to put in your money and get it out as long as it's really in compliance with international standards, which are also a safeguard for those who might be keen on money laundering. Special economic zones given to big corporates. I think they are open to any investor, really. But what we have done, because we realized that everyone coming to invest would want to invest and not pay taxes and all that, which essentially becomes the main attraction for investment for any government. We have designated special economic zones where we seek to promote investment in those areas. For tourism, you go to Victoria Falls, you are guaranteed that when you invest there, it's a special economic zone. You will not be paying taxes for 5 years, but Zita will be able to take you through all the baby steps for you to know that. We have special economic zones for different sectors. For manufacturing, there are areas where you can go in and you invest and you benefit from all the provisions there. So you also touched on title deeds. I don't know the challenges that you may have faced, but if you are buying land from a local authority, that land more than likely is title surveyed. They should be able to give you title deeds. So I don't know where the challenges could have been. But again, our reason for establishing this institution, ZIDA, is that they take on board all investor inquiries, concerns, and they bring them to government for us to clarify or to resolve. But I think it's an issue that perhaps might be isolated. We want to make sure that you don't encounter these issues. So I'm happy that I'm getting this. I'll be able to also just check if there are any jurisdictions that might be giving our potential investors any challenges. So Brenda had spoken, I think Koti kind of highlighted to that. Transparency of investments, what are the rules? So Zita will give you a rule book. Everything that you want to know about investing in Zimbabwe, it should be there. It's also available online, by the way. They were supposed to have come here, but I think it took time to process visas. We apologize for that. But they should have been here to answer to all these. Kokomamoyo, I think she's doing a tremendous job with her very young husband behind her there. We are really grateful for the work that you're doing. You've taken Zimbabwe to the world, really, not just to Germany, and we're grateful to that. So somebody said people from here don't know much about Africa and maybe much about Zimbabwe. And she is providing the solution for that. You heard her in the next week or so, she will be in Zimbabwe with 17 people from Germany. And I'm honored to have been afforded the opportunity to meet them sometime, I think, early April in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. I'll be able to interact with our guests there. We had an episode where we were trying to put certain restrictions in terms of the capital flight, not capital flight, but there were a lot of financial irregularities that we were trying to deal with. And during that episode, unfortunately, 1 or 2 people might have been adversely affected. But I'm happy to say that that is now in the past. You are now able to come. I think you can testify, Mamoyo, that that was just in 2019. You are now not going to be able to encounter that. We've decided to stick with our multi-currency system because we have seen that it provides comfort to both domestic and international investors and travelers alike. I think these were the key issues that I had picked, which I thought we needed to respond to. I hope I haven't left anything important out, and I hope I haven't kept people longer from interacting with their beer. Thank you.
Well, beer is the word. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's give the minister a round of applause as I take my seat as well and welcome your MC for the evening, Elita.